Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and this is my wrap-up for week 3 of March Mystery Madness. I can't believe it's going by so fast, but I had a great reading week, and I can't wait to tell you about the books that I read this week. First, though, I have to tell you what I found that fit the prompts for Friday's Eminem Match Up game. This was tricky. I actually thought that I would have to concede. And then I finally found a book. So the prompts were to find a book that was written or set between 1980 and 2000 and location Central and South America. And that turned out to be quite tricky. But in the end, I did find a book, and it's The Tailor of Panama by John le Carre. And I'm going to put the picture in here. He wrote this in 1996, and it is set in Panama City. So, yay! I can't believe I actually found it. It's about Harry Pendell, who is a British expat working as a tailor in Panama City. Panama Canal will go to the people of Panama in 1999, and so there's a lot of, like, you know, international intrigue, I guess, around that. And so Harry is working for British intelligence. I don't really know a lot about the book. I've never read it, but it fits the prompts, and so that is a win. I read Run by Patricia Wentworth. This is one of her standalone books. She writes the Miss Silver series, which I'm really excited to get to. This one was just really, really fun. This one was written in 1938. So Patricia Wentworth was a contemporary of Agatha Christie and Dorothy L. Sayers. And this was just super, super fun. So we have, I've already forgotten his name, James. James works at a car dealership, and he is driving a car back to the dealership one evening. It's getting dark and fog has descended, and so he's going really slow. He can't see anything. He's really worried about driving off the road. And he does end up sort of driving off the road, but it's like kind of on the drive up to a house. And so he figures, great, I'm going to go to the house and wait out the fog and in safety. So when he gets up to the house, it's all dark. There's no lights on in the house. And he goes to knock on the door only to discover the door is actually standing open. And so he kind of pushes it open, goes inside, turns on his flashlight. And as he's flashing around to kind of get his bearings and see what's going on, he flashes it across a face on the stairs. And it turns out to be this girl, and she runs down the stairs and past him, grabs his arm and says, "Run." And so I just think that's such a great opening, right? And so so it goes from there, and it really was just an adventure. Definitely in the amateur sleuth category, because they don't get the police involved. It's just he's trying to figure out what's happening in this situation, and it was just so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it. And so this would have been for the prompt of single, because it's a single word title. So this is another book that would fit for the prompt of space, which I've already read. So this is just a bonus book, but I've been really wanting to get to this one, and I felt like it this week. So I read Full Dark House by Christopher Fowler. This is the first in his Peculiar Crimes Unit series, which I really, really love. This is a series set in London, and John May and Arthur Bryant are the lead detectives in this unit. So the Peculiar Crimes Unit is a unit of the police, but was set up by the Home Office and is kind of separate from the rest of the police force, and they were given a very specific charge. They were charged with investigating peculiar crimes. But of course, we hear peculiar and we think odd or strange, which is what ends up being what they investigate. But the government, when they made that name, used peculiar in the term of particular crimes. So the unit was set up during World War II to investigate particular crimes during the war, crimes that would have affected morale, and that kind of thing. And so this very first one is where we are introduced to John May and Arthur Bryant. And one thing that I didn't realize because I read this series completely out of order, is that they are both in their early 80s. I knew that they were older, but I thought they were in their 60s, and I thought that maybe Arthur Bryant was like 70. I didn't realize that these detectives were in their early 80s, which honestly makes them just even better. So in this book, when it opens, there has been an explosion at their offices, and everybody thought that Arthur Bryant was there, and so they only find kind of bits, and so Arthur Bryant has died in the explosion. They have a funeral and everything, and John May is investigating. He looks and he realizes that Arthur has been looking back at the very first case that they investigated together, and so the book goes back and forwards in time between John May investigating what happened at their offices and John May remembering when he first met Arthur and their first case that they did in, I think it was 1940, 1941. And so it was just great. So you got to meet these really young detectives. John May, when he joins the unit, is 19. I mean, he's a brand new police officer. And Arthur Bryant is 22. And so I just loved getting that introduction to them. I just adore this series so much. And this is the first sentence. It really was a hell of a blast. It's good, right? And then there was a few other things that he wrote that I really liked. He tried to remember how the seeds of their future had been sown. It was 1940. It was November. A nation was at war, and the world had plundered into darkness. And then one more. I love this reference here. They were standing outside Marks & Co., the bookshop later recognized by its address, 84 Charing Cross Road. I love that there was that little connection there. So yeah, I can highly recommend this series. It's so fun, with great characters and quirky mysteries. And then I read The Curious Incident at Claridge's by R.T. Raichev. This one, I still haven't decided what I think about this one. And so I am about to get spoilery, and when I do, I will make sure I let you know in case it's a book that you want to read. This is partway through the series. It's the only book I've read in this series, the only book I've read by this author, and this was published in 2010. But it really has a feel of Golden Age mysteries, but it's set in modern day. And what's interesting is the reviews on the back like reference Agatha Christie a lot. So Agatha Christie fans will find much to like in this traditional whodunit, a dazzling tour de force, as ingeniously plotted as anything Agatha Christie ever wrote, but wittier and more sophisticated. Greed, jealousy, rampant emotions, and a killer lurk in the wings of this tale that mixes Henry James's psychological insight with Agatha Christie's whodunit plotting skills. So, wow, right? So the main characters are in this are Antonia Darcy and Major Payne. They're a married couple, you know, probably in their 50s, early 60s. They have a grandchild, so, you know. And so Sir Seymour Tradescant gets killed, and that's the case that they are looking into. There are plenty of suspects, and it starts with an incident at Claridge's. And I mean, there was so much of this book that was kind of that traditional whodunit, but then there was also so many parts of this book that felt like maybe the author was subverting the form a bit, but I've never read anything else, and so I think I need to read more in order to figure that out. But what I want to talk about here, and where I'm going to get spoilery, is the very end. So I'm going to put spoiler across the screen here for you. If this is a book that you want to read, you might want to fast forward until you don't see that anymore. But let's just get really spoilery here. So at the very end, Major Payne and his wife, who have been investigating, they have figured it out. They know who did it, but they don't have the evidence to take to the police. And so they do that classic bluff the murderer in order to get a confession. But what's interesting is it doesn't work. And so that's another example of how the author is subverting the form, that classic trope, which when you read it, you expect it to work. But in this case, it actually doesn't. And so the very end, the very last chapter is one page. He calls it Nemesis. And so in the end, all he could do is take what he did have to the police, and the police say it's not enough, we can't arrest them with what you have. So it was that Sir Seymour Tradeskin's huge fortune passed into the hands of his murderers. Evil appeared to have won. Nevertheless, Nemesis did have the final word, and when Major Payne and Antonia read in the morning paper that Lady Tradeskin and her friend Captain Jesty had been killed in the accidental crashing of Lady Tradeskin's two-seater plane in a field near the M25 on 30th August, they knew that justice was satisfied. There were signs of autumn in the air, and their garden looked silvery with faint dew. Well, that's that, I suppose, Payne said, putting the Times down. It's the kind of deus ex machina solution I would never have chosen for any of my detective novels, said Antonia as she helped herself to more coffee. So, I don't know what to make of this book. So Antonia is a writer. She writes detective books. So in the end, he gives it a deus ex machina ending. And that's acceptable, that justice is served because the two of them ended up getting killed in this plane crash. I honestly don't know what to make of this ending. So if you're watching the spoilery part, let's talk about this in the comments down below, because I don't know what to make of that. And I don't know what to make of the author having his character, who is an author, saying, I would never write that kind of ending. So yeah, talk to me about that. I need to talk to people about this. Okay. So here's the update of my bingo sheet. I was able to add single and place. Claridges in the title was for place, so I feel like I'm doing very well there. And then I read a few other books. This is The Bachelor Girl's Guide to Murder by Raichev McMillan. I read this as a read-along with Sarah from The Bookish Knitter, and that was really fun. I was on her live show the other day where we talked about this book. This is a historical mystery set in Toronto in 1910. It's just a short little thing. It was really fun. It certainly wasn't the perfect mystery, but it had fun characters, and I liked the time period and the setting. I'm somewhat familiar with Toronto. I mean, I've been there. And so it was kind of neat to read about places that I recognized anyway. And it's very Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, except that they are single women. And so that was interesting, like that look at single women in that time period and what it may have been like for them. The issue of power came up a lot in this book, which was interesting. But the Miranda character, she's the Sherlock character, very much like Sherlock, but also maybe sometimes a little bit worse than Sherlock. There were moments where I thought that she was just really mean to Jem, her friend Jem, who is the Dr. Watson character. Kind of even more so than Sherlock would have been to Dr. Watson. So then there was that. And then there was a couple holes in the mystery plot. But overall, I did enjoy this read, and I would continue in the series just to see where it goes. And because I'd like to go back to that world of Toronto in 1910. And then I read The Mystery of Mrs Christie by Marie Benedict. This was the choice for the month of March for the Sampler Girls Book Club. And I was curious to read this. So this is her take on what happened in those 11 days when Agatha Christie disappeared, which was a huge deal. It turned into a huge manhunt. It was all over the newspapers, and then Agatha Christie never ever spoke about it. When she was found and brought home, they claimed amnesia, that she didn't remember, and then once she made that statement, she never ever spoke about it again. So of course it's intriguing to know what happened. But ultimately, I wasn't a huge fan of this book because I didn't like how the author portrayed either Agatha Christie or her husband, Archie. I mean, Archie was really portrayed, I mean, yes, he cheated on her and then they got divorced, so that's not fantastic, but I mean, I think he was portrayed potentially worse than he really was. And Agatha Christie is portrayed as, I think, more devious than she is. I mean, she wrote the most amazing mysteries, so maybe there is an element of deviousness in her character, but I just wasn't really a fan of how they were portrayed. So I get where the author was going with this book, kind of what she wanted to say about women and power and, you know, getting their power back and all of that. But I just don't think that she completely got Agatha Christie in here. Also, I did not appreciate that she 100% spoils the murder of Roger Ackroyd. I just don't think that that's necessary. And like, that's been happening a lot recently, where plots of classic mysteries are being spoiled in books, and I don't know why that needs to be done. And so, I mean, since it's becoming a thing, my suggestion is that there needs to be fair warning at the beginning of the book. Like, there needs to be a note from the editor or something that says, hey, this book is about to get spoiled in here, so if you had planned on reading it, maybe you should read it first before you read this book. I just think that that's only fair. Yes, the murder of Roger Ackroyd was written almost 100 years ago, but that doesn't mean that everybody's read it. And these are books that are still being read by new readers, and so I just don't think it's fair to spoil them. And then I read The Plot is Murder by V.M. Burns. This is a cozy mystery that came out in 2017, and this was really fun. So it's about Samantha Washington, who is a recent widow, and she quits her job as a teacher and buys some property to open a mystery bookstore, which was the plan that she had with her husband before he passed away. And so she's preparing to open the bookstore in this book. And so I love that as a setting. That's a buzzword for me. Mystery bookstore, 100%. This is set in Michigan, and but Samantha is also writing a book, and so it's also a book within a book, which is awesome. And I actually really liked the story. So she was writing a historical mystery set in England, which I love. So that one was set in the 30s. And so I liked reading that story almost as much as I liked reading this story. It had good characters. I really liked her grandma and all her grandma's friends who got involved in the mystery. And she didn't do the things that normally annoy me about amateur sleuths. So this one was really fun, and I would totally continue in this series. And then I also read a book for review for Book Sirens. This was called Murder Most Pemberley by Jessica Burg. And this was so much fun. Imagine a world where the characters in Jane Austen's books weren't characters but real people. And so the main character is Eliza Darcy, who is Elizabeth Darcy is her great 5 times over grandmother. So I was just like, yes, I am in for a world where this is real. And then Agatha Christie was referenced in the very first paragraph of this book, and I thought, that's it, I'm hooked, I'm in, I love this story. So it's set in contemporary times. Eliza Darcy lives in the States. Her father grew up at Pemberley, but had some kind of an estrangement with his brother that he will not talk about, and so they have never been back to England. So when the book opens, Eliza is on her way to England for a family reunion at Pemberley. Sweet, right? Yeah. And then once she arrives and she meets her family, and Pemberley is crowded with relatives, and then a body is found floating in the fountain. So, I mean, Jane Austen, Agatha Christie, a mystery, like so fun, right? And I absolutely loved all of the Jane Austen names that were popping up. So she's a Darcy. Then there was a whole bunch of Bennets as well. But then there was also Knightleys and Tilneys and Wentworths. The DCI who came to investigate was DCI Wentworth. Oh my goodness, I loved it so much. And there were Willoughbys and Wickhams, and oh my goodness, it was just so much fun. Her great aunt Iris was a hoot. I loved her so much. Now the book wasn't perfect. So I think the author overdid it with the British slang or idioms. She had all the people who were British speaking in a way that may have been overdoing it a little bit. But you know what? I loved the rest of the book, so that's fine. And then she also had the classic at the very end. Eliza's like, I know who did it, but I don't want to say without being sure. And then she gets herself into a dangerous situation. That thing annoys me, but I mean, whatever. That happens a lot. So in the end, I just really enjoyed it. I had so much fun reading that book, and I would look for more in that series for sure. And then I also read a couple more short stories from my vintage mystery and detective stories edited by Stuart Davies. I read The Great Ruby Robbery by Grant Allen and The Murder of the Mandarin by Arnold Bennett. The Murder of the Mandarin, in the end, I don't know how that was even considered a mystery. It certainly wasn't a detective story, and it was barely a mystery. It was okay. I mean, I didn't really like it. I didn't really like the characters either. The Great Ruby Robbery was written in 1892, and I thought it was funny how the author addressed the reader, or it was like a way of like kind of drawing you in, making you part of it. So he says, Persis Remanet, she was an American heiress who is in London to find a husband, of course, with a title, ideally. She was on her way back from the Wilcox's ball. She was stopping, of course, with Sir Everard and Lady McClure at their house in Hampstead. I say, of course, advisedly, because if you or I go to see New York, we have to put up at our own expense. $5 a day without wine or extras at the Windsor or the Fifth Avenue. But when the pretty American comes to London, and every American girl is ex officio pretty, in Europe at least, I suppose they keep their ugly ones at home for domestic consumption, she's invariably the guest either of a dowager duchess or of a royal academician like Sir Everard of the first distinction. So he does that a lot throughout the story. So I didn't mind The Great Ruby Robbery was pretty good. Okay. So that is it for me. I'm still reading Strong Poison by Dorothy L. Sayers. I kind of let this one fall behind with all the other reading I was doing for the month. And before I say goodbye, let's play another round in my Eminem Manuscript Match-Up game. This has been so much fun playing this game, and I love seeing the books that you guys come up with that fit the prompts. Yeah, it's really fun. Okay, so we have green, and green gives us time period. Blue, 1980 to 2000. Okay, I'm evoking the no repeat rule, and in this case, it's the no repeat rule because we just had that prompt the other day. So I'm going again. Orange gives us 1920 to 1950. All right, so we need to find a book that was set or written between 1920 and 1950. Orange gives us detective. We've had that a lot recently too, so I'm going to go again. Orange again. All right. Green No repeat rule, so we better go again. Orange. Orange. Oh, this is funny. Oh no. Okay. Green. You are kidding. Okay, come on. There has to be more than orange and green in here. Green again. Oh no. Oh, that's too funny. Okay, brown. Here we go. This is the miscellaneous category. We're getting towards the bottom of the bag, so maybe I need to open a new bag and dump these ones in that one. Let's see. What kind of miscellaneous are we gonna get? Orange gives us poison. All right, so there we go. We got there in the end. So we need to find a book that was written or set between 1920 and 1950 and involves poison. I would love to know what you find. Put your answers in the comment section down below, and I will see you for another video soon. Bye.